do our classes, our online classes asynchronous so that the students can be self-paced, but also, be held to the same standard. Yeah, sure. Happy to talk about anything. And I mean, Mandy knows this too. Like, there's very little that I won't talk about. I mean, I can't even give you a topic that I wouldn't talk about. So,
All right. Happy Monday to everyone. Everyone's laughing here. It's so funny the way we get
Lots of giggles. Happy
lots of
Monday,
giggles. That's okay.
everybody. Giggle
Happy
away
Monday.
with us.
Monday, March 13th. Mandy, what are you looking forward to most for this week?
Ooh, you stumped me. I was all ready to talk about our weekend. Well, can I
I
talk
know.
about one thing? Because I would like
Yes.
for the I would like for audience chime in if possible. I'm trying out a new red lipstick today. So it's called Flower. It is this. I don't know who makes it, but just look at my lips. I'm trying out a new red lipstick. Normally I put a matte on and then I put a gloss on and it's a lot. And then I have lipstick, like I have to travel my lipstick throughout. But now I have office lipstick and I have purse lipstick. So that's something important that's happening in my life right now, Amani.
Okay.
What about
Okay.
you and your lipstick? What's happening? Lip balm, any chapstick? What's happening in your world there?
Just the basics there. Just the
Okay.
basics there. And
What are
so
you
to answer
excited about this
my own
week? What are you
question,
excited about?
I'm gonna go to Las Vegas this week for like March Madness and
Oh.
to meet up with some of my best friends from childhood. So that's what I'm looking forward to this week. And
Ooh.
in school we have these group projects that we've done, and the first group project was due last week, so we're going to review them in class. And I've looked at about half of them, and they're really, really good. So I can't wait to
Ooh.
share it with the students so they can see their work and talk to them about it. So I'm excited about that for tomorrow.
What's the project this time? I know you do a lot of case studies, but what's this
Yeah.
project?
This project is they have to choose between the movie industry or the music industry, address an issue, and then submit some solution to the issue. They have to do it in a form of a 5-minute video, no longer than
Ooh.
5 minutes. And then we watch the video in class, and then I ask them questions about their video, and then I give them grades later on. And so that's the
Ooh.
project. So it teaches them a little bit of like filming, doing voiceovers, putting something together like a long commercial, not using Zoom, and just being creative and addressing solutions. And it's some really good skills that they can use as they move forward in their careers too.
Ooh, and great content. Great content for you if
Yes.
they allow you to. Great content for them for their own personal brand if they can chop that 5 minutes up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. I do have something I'm looking forward to aside from my new lipstick. So,
Okay.
something this
Okay.
weekend, or later this week, I'm attending the KSL, the KSL Hotel Group, on their
Mhm.
advisory board, and we have a meeting Thursday, Friday at the Grand Del Mar
Mm.
in Del Mar at the Fairmont, and I'm super excited to be there among my peers and to talk about some of the challenges our industry is having and how we can work together better as a hotel and client. So I'm excited about that later on this week.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
the both of us are also excited about our guest today. Talk to us a little bit about our guest today.
Okay. Super excited. So the founder of the Henley Company, is celebrating 16 years in business today. That is a long time to own an event company. And the
Yes.
name of the company has a very interesting story. We'll let her tell us about that. She's also worked on events such as the Olympics and the World Cup. And she is also an author, just like we are, of this great book called Permission. I actually was looking at it today.
Okay.
I have a lot of earmarks in it. And
Okay.
she is an instructor at San Diego State and Mesa College. So I'd love to bring to the stage Nicole Matthews.
Very good. So we give you a round of applause.
Hi.
Hi,
Yes. Yes.
welcome.
Thank
Welcome.
you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. My first question to you, and you'll find that Mandy and I will go back and forth. And Mandy will like, hold on, I want to ask another question. So it's just
Mhm.
kind of like a little tennis. You can ask us questions if you want to. Um, you have a very busy schedule between running your own company, volunteer boards, and teaching. Right off the bat, I'd love to learn from you some tips in terms of how do you manage your time and not get overwhelmed and still can complete things in a timely fashion.
Oh my gosh, it's a good question out of the bat, let me tell you. I don't I wish I had like this secret sauce that I could just say these are the 3 things you need to do and everything's gonna be easier in life. I think I'm just wired to manage a lot of balls all at the same time, right? Juggle all the balls I can. And so for me, I like that diversity that's just constantly going on. in my mind, in my work. And so I try really hard to, like, after I've come off a really big project, to dedicate, a day to get a massage or a spa, or just to kind of take it easier. Just because I think you need to have that relaxation and that just time to disconnect and kind of reconnect, if you will. But I do love the fact that I get to do so many different things. I feel really, really blessed by that. I get bored super easy, and so if I had to do the same thing every single day, my goodness, I would not be a lot of fun to be around. But the fact that I get to do events, I get to do travel coordination for my clients, I get to teach, I get to serve my community. All these things are just such heart fulfilling things that I love so much, and I'm really, really lucky to be the owner of my own business and sort of be able to design the life that I want to live, which is a big theme of my book.
Yeah.
I love that you said I get to do, not I have to do. You said get like 4 times, and so many people
Yeah.
would be like, well, then I have to do this, I have to that. And you said I get. And that sort of segues like what you just said, like you give yourself permission to
Mhm.
have a spa day, or you give yourself permission to fire a client. I'm looking at like the front of your book. Everybody, this is her book called Permission. And I read this a long time ago when it came out. And I think my takeaway from that was like, just give yourself permission to not like
Mhm.
somebody, or give yourself
Mhm.
permission to take a rest or a nap. And on the
Mhm.
front of this, it says, commit to finding my courage, commit to my architecture, and then acknowledge. So, can you just tell us a little bit about your book, Permission, and what inspired it? And like, what do you think people got out of it? I know what I got out of it, but just I think giving yourself permission is so
Yeah.
powerful. I'd love for you to expand on that.
Well, it really came out of me doing a lot of keynote speaking and just speaking within the industry. I've been in the event industry literally since I was 22 years old, and so that has now been a long time coming. And so I used to speak a lot for at our industry conferences, and I would tell my story, and I would talk a lot about creating my own opportunities. I'm a huge believer in creating your own opportunities, and as you were introducing me, you mentioned the fact that I've worked at the Olympics, and that's a whole big story in the book about how I got to work at the Olympics. And that was about creating my own opportunity for myself. And so I'd be giving these presentations, I'd be talking to audiences, and then I started to notice that I would have these women would come up to me, generally women, and they would say, "Oh, I'm so inspired by what you said or your story. And it feels like you just gave me permission to create my own life or design my own life." And I kept thinking, why am I giving you don't need my permission to do that. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you were inspired by my words and took some takeaways from the presentation, but I don't need to give you permission, sweetheart. You need to give yourself permission. And that I
Mm.
think is one of those gifts of age. So as I was in my 30s and 40s, that was my like understanding, giving myself permission to create my own life, create my own company, take on the projects that I'm interested in. That's a really important piece of it. And I would say now that I'm so permission driven, the other half of that is also being boundary driven too. And I can tell you, there is nothing I love more now in this stage of my life than a boundary. Boundary with my clients, boundary in my personal relationships, boundary in what I will just tolerate in the world. And so, I think those are a nice like yin and yang of how to sort of, live life is a give yourself permission. And a lot of times, especially as women, we put ourselves last and we think, oh, I don't deserve to take that vacation, or I don't deserve to start my own business because so many other people need me and my family. I need to just continue to work that, stable 9 to 5 job. And I just, I guess I'm just not wired that way. And so as soon as I very early on decided that, by creating my own opportunities, that was really giving myself permission to lean into work and people and places that I really wanted to be a part of. That changed everything for me. And so that's why the book is called Permission, because it's really about giving yourself permission to design the life that you want to live, and not the life that your husband or your mom and dad or your industry. You get to design it all. That's the wonderful piece. And so I just hope that everybody's inspired to figure out how to give themselves permission.
Mic
Now,
drop.
as a
Good.
follow-up,
Good.
after we pick up the mic from dropping it, as a follow-up, can you share, like, how did you writing the book, how did that help your brand and your speaking career grow?
Mhm. So, let me back up by saying I wrote the book in 6 weeks. And so, Mandy asked, the previous question was sort of how did I get there, right? So, Wrote the book in 6 weeks. I'm a huge believer if the words are in there and the message needs to come out, the words will come onto the page very, very quickly. The little piece of advice I would tell anyone who wants to write a book is it's all in your table of contents. So as soon as that's where you should start. What are the things that I want to tell the reader in every single chapter? Then you go back and you say, here's a couple case studies, here's a couple stories, here's a couple things that I want to talk about in that chapter. And so then when you sit down to write, you're just connecting those dots. You're just connecting the stories together, right? So for me, that was the important process. I actually did have a literary coach that I worked with, and she would put me through my paces. So I would write through the week. Saturday night at midnight was my deadline to get it to her. Sunday she would edit. Monday we'd get back and together to talk about what I was writing in the future. We talked very little about what I had written because writers will often get caught up in editing and
Mm,
fixing what we've already done, and that
right.
limits the page and forward motion. So editing will come. There's lots of people who can edit. You can revise. You can all do all of that. But if you don't have words on a page, you have nothing to edit. And so you have to be forward thinking when you're writing a book. So anyway, the book came in six weeks. I think for me, in terms of my brand, I'm such a believer in creating my own opportunities, and that's kind of what I became known for in the industry. I self-produce my own events. I did very early on in my business. That was a big piece of my business where we were self-producing our own events. I was my own client. I was selling tickets to the event. I was making more money actually off of those self-produced events than I was from clients who were paying me. And so, again, I just sort of look at life through where's there an opportunity I can create, where's the challenge I can take on. And so, permission really is just the next iteration of that. It's just the storytelling behind that.
Oh, okay. All right. I love that. And then so you wrote the book. Now, speaking, when you're thinking about your speaking career, because this is something that Mandy and I both do, and we're kind of trying to
Mhm.
grow and all that. What, how have you grown your speaking career? And if you were talking to people who are new in terms of keynote speaking, what advice would you have for them in terms of kind of growing and expand their options with regards to speaking?
Yeah. So there's so many opportunities to speak, particularly with industry conferences and Rotary clubs, and everybody's looking for content, right? One of the worst jobs I think on a board of directors is the person who has to do the programming, right? Because you got to
Oh,
fill that space every single week, right? I mean,
we
sometimes it
understand.
just yeah, exactly. It's like finding guests for your podcast, right? You think
Yeah.
it's all so easy. So I think, that there is lots of opportunity to speak. I certainly, for me, I spoke very regularly at industry events, big conferences that we would go to. What's the nice thing is that in exchange for speaking, they cover the cost for you to attend that event. So even in the beginning, when you're not necessarily getting paid to speak, you're sort of, you're still there's a benefit for that. You do have to think about how much of my time am I willing to give away without something in return. So, like I said in the beginning with the industry conferences, that was a nice trade off. I would speak for an hour, but I'd get, a 3-day conference pass to attend the industry conference. So, there's always seems to be a call out for speakers. So, I pay attention to that. And then just think about also who needs to hear your particular message. So, for me, obviously, women. Is really who the book is sort of catered to. So there's lots of women's groups that need, a speaker once a month for their monthly program. You can't be afraid to ask or to send your information and just say, hey, here, this is me. This is what I speak about. If this would be interest to your audience, I would love to present. You also want to go to them with how it will benefit their audience. So what will the audience learn when they walk out the door, right? So you don't want to just be self-promotion like, "Oh, I wrote this new book and everybody should come," but more about what are the takeaways, what are the learnings for the audience. Try to make the person who is having to fill the calendar make their job a lot easier by giving them all the information that they're looking for in terms of like takeaways and what to expect from you as a speaker. But I think there are just lots of opportunities to continue to grow as a speaker. COVID sort of, changed things a little bit. I've done obviously more virtual stuff, but I love it. I think it's such a great space to be able to be in front of a room of really, dynamic people who are eager to learn. And it's such a great opportunity to just share ideas, not only as the person who's speaking, but also let me learn from. I'm not the
Mhm.
just the subject matter expert in the room. I'm just one of many, and who happens to be at the front of the room. So it's just a great opportunity, and I've met a lot of great people. And it's funny, I still get people who'll say, "Oh, I attended your session at the special event conference a few years ago, and I've just self-produced my own, my first event. And it's like, oh, that's the reward, right? That's what we love. That's the reward. So really grateful.
Nice. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Mandy. I'm sure because keep going.
I know, I know. I had like 7 spin-off questions on that, but I really do want to ask, you talked about the Olympics. You were in Russia for the Olympics. Can you talk
Mhm.
about, because I do think it, and I know it's a little bit of a longer story, but I think that's a fascinating story in your book about how you secured your spot on the events team with the Olympics. And then can you tell us what happened when you got to Russia? That's a two-part
Yeah.
question. And
Two-part
I'm out.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So it will be a little bit of a long-winded story, so stick with me. But I am a huge Anglophile. So I am all about all things UK. I grew up in the Princess Diana generation. My family stems from England. So I am 100% on board. This is not a fad for me. Like it, I am all in all the time on all things England. So when London was issued or was rewarded the London 2012 Olympics, that became a personal goal of mine. I was going to figure out how to actually get to the Olympics because I really, really wanted to work the Olympics. For me, that was sort of like a pinnacle event for my career. So one night I was sitting at my desk. It was November of 2011. I was sitting at my desk and just was suddenly inspired. It was a Sunday night. And I sent out an email to about 150 people that I knew, just saying, hey, here's my dream, right? I just want to let you in on my dream. I've always wanted to work the Olympics. I know somebody knows somebody who can help me make it happen. This is my background. Obviously, in events, I would love to do something that, highlights my skills, but I am 100% on board with like, I'll take any job as long as I can work the London 2012 games. So I sent out that email. My only criteria really was that somebody would recognize my name. We didn't have to be best friends. I didn't have had to have gone to lunch with these people previously. I just wanted them to recognize my name when it landed in their inbox. And I just pushed send on this email that said, here's my dream. I'm just going to put it out to the world. And I just hope somebody can, help me to make it happen. I was really, really fortunate because 35 people responded to that email.
Wow.
Not only from we have a office in London, let me see if we're involved, to my cousin lives in London, or my sister-in-law has worked events like that in the past, whatever it might be. So two things happened from that. The first being that it just created this enormous swell of positivity, which just feels good. The second thing, it also held me very accountable because I
Mhm.
couldn't just drop that into everybody's inbox and then sit back and be like, well, that's it. I'm just going to let the universe find me. It couldn't be that. So instead, what happened was now that it was out in the world, right? I would see people, industry events, networking out in the world, and people would, what was the first thing they'd say to me? How's the Olympics coming? Do you have a contract yet? Are you going? And so for me, every single day I had to keep working towards that goal because now I knew that my dream was out into the world. And so eventually, one of the professors that I teach with, and I used to teach with long ago at San Diego Mesa College, she was saying to me, she's like, I didn't even know you wanted to work the Olympics. She's like, I've worked a bunch of them. Let me make an introduction for you. And so that's literally how it happened. I found the right person who was able to make an introduction. So London 2012 was my first games. I had the most incredible job. It'll probably be the greatest thing I ever do professionally. I was hired by an agency out of the Midwest that specializes in sponsorship and brand activation for the major sponsors for worldwide sporting events. So I was assigned to the team that worked on Visa. So Visa is a major, obviously, top sponsor for the Olympics. And because the Visa Europe office is in London, I was assigned to the Visa Europe office. And so I managed the CEO and his wife and a few board members. So everywhere they went, I went. I served as their sort of personal concierge throughout the course of the game. So I was third row center court watching Serena Williams play. I was, sixth row at Olympic
Awesome.
Park when Usain Bolt went literally flying past me. Every single
Nice.
day I had an absolute pinch me moment and thought, this is the pinnacle of my career. I know it will never be like this before again. So London 2012 luckily rolled into some Super Bowls for me. And then ultimately it was time for Russia. So we did Sochi, which was 2014. And as much as the universe said, we're going to really bless you with the London 2012 experience, we're going to yin and yang that and have you go to Sochi for 6 weeks. and you're going to now have the Sochi experience, which was quite different than the London experience, let me tell you. So, Russia is just a different culture. It's just a different business practice. There's just a lot of things that are sort of hard about being in Russia, not only the language, but just sort of the environment in general. And this was obviously pre, what's happening in the world right now with Russia. But
Mhm.
one of the things that Mandy was alluding to is that I actually had a really severe allergic reaction to a cleaning product that they used.
Oh no.
And while I was there. And so that's always fun when you're really far from home and you're suddenly, rashing up, if you will, because you've had an allergic reaction to a cleaning product, which I don't know what they put in that cleaning product, but it was enough to send me to 3 doctors and the threat of actually having to fly me to Moscow for additional treatment. So it's great when your best friend for my entire life, my best friend Becca is a PhD in pharmacology, and I would send her home, take photos of like, this is what they're now giving me. And she would somehow, in her wisdom, decipher it from Russian to English and say, I don't think that's what they should be giving you, or yeah, that's okay. You could probably take that. So it was a long 6 weeks. But obviously still working at the Olympics is not a bad gig. Rio 2016 was my last Olympic Games. And then I was also in Brazil for FIFA Confederation Cup a few years back, and then just returned
Yes.
in
Yeah.
December from World Cup. So I was over in Qatar for almost a month in December
Oh.
working World Cup. So I've been very
Amani is going to
fortunate.
cry right now.
Are you a huge soccer
So,
fan, Amani?
oh, yeah, so let me tell you, where is it? So I was at the World Cup 2010 in South Africa. I was in
Okay.
Brazil for the World Cup in 2014. I
Uh-huh.
followed all the events there. So, I'm a big sports guy. So, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm
Yeah.
jealous. I don't know if jealous is the right word because I'm happy for you. But,
It's
I
okay to
wish
be
I knew
jealous.
you
Give
were
yourself
winning.
permission to be jealous.
Yeah,
Come
you
on.
can
Yes,
be
yes,
jealous.
yes. Oh my
Envious.
gosh.
Envious.
We
Yes.
actually have a question from the audience that speaks just to what you're talking about. If I could kind
Okay.
of insert this question. So
Mhm.
I hope I pronounce this right, and Mandy, you might have to help me. But is it Sruthi? So Sruthi, Sruthi. I hope I
Srutha.
said that right.
Srutha. Yeah, you got it.
Srutha.
Yeah.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for joining us on the live. What were
Hi.
some of the biggest challenges you faced during the planning and management of the Olympics? How did you address these challenges, and what lessons did you learn from them?
Okay. So on the Olympic work, here's the beautiful part of it. I had no pre-work. So I just got to show up and execute. Right. So there's this whole in our industry, there's the planners and then there's the doers
Mhm.
on site.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
for all of my Olympic experience, I've been very fortunate that I work with this amazing agency. They are now, it was called Sportmark and now it's called GMR Marketing. They absorbed Sportmark many years ago. But so GMR has this amazing group of account executives and these really hardworking event planners who are doing all this amazing behind the scenes work. And then they hire senior people like myself to come in and execute on site. So we each kind of have our area of specialty. We come on site, we execute, and then we go home. Sometimes that's referred to as a travel director position. So you might hear that as an industry term.
Mhm.
So that was what's happening on the Olympic level. I will answer that question though from the World Cup experience because I was involved in pre-planning for World Cup. So I did do a program for Coca-Cola, their global hospitality program. We ran about 1,500 guests through their World Cup experience from the quarterfinals on. So we did not activate the first part of the tournament, but we came in
Right.
for the playoffs, and that was a challenge because of you've got time differences. I'm based in California. From the difference between me and Doha in Qatar is 12 hours. So everything is running in a 12-hour, there's a very short amount of time that we're all working at the same time during the day. So it's a lot of very, very early meetings, 5 a.m. meetings, or very, very late, 10 or 11 p.m. meetings, California time. So you have to understand how to work in those time differences. There's also cultural differences, obviously, as well, that you have to be sensitive to. Not everyone runs at the same pace. Some people are very, some cultures are big on this is my word. In the event industry, we appreciate a word, but we also like a little memo of understanding and something in writing, right? So,
Write it down.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great that it's like, no, 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 we promise that this is what's going to happen. No, 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 we're going to need that in writing just so everyone's on the same page. So, just like planning an event domestically, when you get into global events, there's a lot of details, but that added layer is culture, language, time differences, just even getting your staff there and housing staff for 21 days when we were on site. And then obviously the last couple of years, we've layered in that nice little thing called COVID, and how you're managing COVID protocols and different countries at the time, until right before the games. Qatar was a country that was still requiring testing. So even though the rest of the world had sort of dropped that obligation, Qatar was still requiring that. So there was a lot of scramble about how people were going to get in, testing, what does vaccine mean, around the world, that kind of thing. So there is an added layer, obviously, with COVID, with what it's brought. But hopefully you answered the question just in terms of, planning. It's kind of, when you're working on that global event level for those sort of sporting events, I mean, it's just, you're running at a million miles a minute. And there are, I always say, long days and short nights on site. And it's a grind because you're doing that for 17 days for the Olympics, 17 days straight. There is no day off
Yeah.
when you're working in
For
the
sure.
global sports world, right? So these tournaments run, for 3 weeks. The World Cup is, a month, right? And so there is no day off. There is no like, oh, the staff gets to just go have, enjoy, around Doha. It's like you get moments of that, but your reality is very groundhog, because you're either bringing guests in, you're executing their program, or it's a departure day, and then you're getting ready for the next wave of guests to come in. So
Yeah.
it's not for the faint and the weak, but it is really a blessing. And you just have to always remind yourself, when you're sitting in a stadium, especially the World Cup finals, and that environment is happening around you, and you are thinking, I'm so tired, but I am at the World Cup finals, and I have to remember that this is such a blessing. So I try very, very, very hard to not get caught up in I'm tired, but I try to live in a place of I'm fortunate. And so that really helps me to kind of
Okay.
overcome those long hours. Yeah.
So
I
just
love,
from my
oh, you, okay.
own curiosity,
Yeah.
were you at this France versus Argentina World Cup final? Were you there?
This most recent one?
Yes.
Yes. I was at 6 matches at this most recent World Cup.
Randy, just so you're aware, I think you were watching it. You might have been watching. That was one
Yeah,
of the
we were
best
watching it. Like you had
Yes.
it on in the background of one of our calls. Yes.
Yes, that was one of the best World Cup finals in history,
Amazing. I
and you
I
were there.
wish, Amani, I wish I could say, because everybody who I would see on Facebook, like people were, everybody watching on TV, obviously, and everybody was just like, this is the most amazing thing. And I don't mean to like brag, but it was amazing on television. It was mind blowing to be
Yes.
in that stadium. I just wish everyone could experience. I mean, it was amazing on TV, but let me just tell you what it was like to be in that stadium for that final match was out of this world. It really was one of those that you're like, I'll never forget this. I want to like soak this in for every moment. So
I
I'm
just
getting
got
chills. I'm
goosebumps.
getting
Yes,
goosebumps
I
myself
do
right now, like, oh my
yeah.
god.
I do too.
Over to you,
Before
Mandy, while I recover. Over to you.
Yeah, recover. Before we move on, I know we have tons of other questions, but I just want to take some space here and reflect on, I think, a couple important points you brought up about your Olympic experiences. Like, and I just want everybody to stop for a minute and think about this. She wanted something, right? So she asked for help. She sent 150 emails to a whole bunch of people, not her best friends, but people that she knew. She leaned into her network. And again, not her best friends, but just people
Mhm,
that might know somebody. And then she announced her goal, announced her
mhm.
intention, announced her dream. I think those are the three pillars of really creating an opportunity. And you just laid it out so perfectly for
Yeah.
everybody listening. And I really admire that about you. And here, it
Thanks.
didn't just stop at the one Olympics. Like, look at all these
Yeah.
other events for
Right.
years to come after.
Right.
That's the
That's what I always say, is that
exponential.
one email that I sent in, on a dark Sunday night in November, led to this whole other piece to my professional life, which I will forever be grateful for. The piece, though, I should also add to that is just, you can't just ask the universe and not be one who's willing to help as well. And I constantly am saying to people that I meet, yeah, my students, industry people, like, you have to tell me what it is that you need so that I can pay attention when that crosses my desk. Right.
Mm.
So if it's, one day somebody was saying, I would love to talk to somebody who works at Nike. Now, great. We have LinkedIn and that's a wonderful tool. Don't get me wrong. I am such a champion of LinkedIn, but, sometimes you can't find that right person at Nike. But I might have just had a conversation with somebody who works with Nike. And now I go, oh, wait a minute. Mandy was looking for a connection. So now I can make that connection. Right. So at the same time, the closing of my email out to the world was, please let me know how I can help you too. Because I am a very big believer in that you can't just always ask, right? But you need to, it's the Gary V, right?
Yeah.
You gotta serve, 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 and then make the ask. And so it is very, very reciprocal. But I love knowing what people's big dreams are, or even if it's just a small, like, how can I help you? But if you don't tell me what it is that you're looking for, I don't know how to help you. I mean, I
Yeah.
read a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff. I travel the world. So there could be something that you've mentioned to me that could be the answer that you're looking for, or at least an introduction, or a, hey, I saw this and I thought of you kind of thing. And I think we tend to be very sort of like, I don't want to ask for help. Particularly women aren't great about asking for help. And like, there's just no room for that. We've got to help each other out. And that's a big piece of permission, is just asking for help. Like, how can I help you? How can I best be of assistance to you? I might not have the answer today, but I might read something in 3 months or meet somebody in 3 months that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, Andy and I were just having this conversation. Let me make that introduction. Or, hey, here's an article. I'll do that a lot. Is just like, we were talking about this. Let me shoot you something that might be relevant to what you're working on. It's just a nice flow of energy back and forth between people. And for me, I'm so blessed by, the asks that I've made and the rewards I've been given, that how could I not, return that favor, right?
Mhm.
It just makes sense to me. I wouldn't want to do anything less. So,
Ah, so beautiful. The give and get. That's so beautiful.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
you had a question percolating on your mind, Manny, that you were going to ask.
I have a ton of questions, but it's your turn. I'll bounce it to you. I
He's so caught
I
up in the final
I
thing.
pickleball
I
the patio to
know.
you.
Well, okay. So, what kind of advice do you give to young professionals who are just entering into the industry,
Mhm.
given what you learned during COVID? How has your advice to young professionals kind of changed or evolved since March 13th, 2020?
I ooh, it's a good one. I would say that what COVID, that period of, lockdown, everybody's not working. I was very fortunate because I actually did work a lot through COVID. I mean, I lost a couple of projects, but I have some regular clients that are on retainer that did keep me through. So I was actually working through COVID, which was a blessing, because I know that's not everybody's reality. So I feel very fortunate about that. But I think what that time period gave all of us was just space to not only do our own self reflection and kind of, who do I want to be? And I always say, if you came out of COVID and you didn't know who you wanted to live with, what partner you wanted to be with, what city you wanted to be living in, what job you still wanted to be doing post pandemic, I mean, you weren't paying attention, right? There was nothing
Mm.
else to do but think about what was going on in all of our lives, or lack thereof, right? And so I think for me also, the what I would take away from that is that it also allowed people to have time to make new connections and to have conversations, because there kind of wasn't anything else really for most people to do. So I'm such a believer in LinkedIn. I have all my students are required to do LinkedIn projects. They have to update their LinkedIn profile. They have to join groups. They have to do what, be active on LinkedIn. We have such a gift with, like, not even having to leave our bed and we can network. I mean, how cool is it that we live in this time? For my very first internship, when I worked for an event company while I was still in college, I had to open the yellow pages and I had to look at
Yes.
party planning companies. And that's a true
Mm.
story. I was a student at UC Davis.
Mm.
I couldn't go to the
Mhm.
career center, and this is not really that long ago. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in school, but when you think about it, I mean, we're not talking 100 years ago. We're talking in the
Mhm.
last 25 years. I couldn't go to the career center on campus and say I want to do events. They had nowhere to send me. They didn't know what that meant. And so I had to create my own opportunity. There it is again. And I literally opened the yellow pages for
Mhm.
Sacramento and started calling party planning companies. That's what they were called. And I was lucky enough to meet a woman who had her own business, and she was welcoming to have me come and be her intern. So I used to drive to Sacramento and I'd be her intern, and she taught me the business at her kitchen table. And the other thing that she taught me, which was very, very important, is that she is an African American woman. And so she suddenly showed me how to look at events from a different, very, an eye different than my own, which was such a really valuable lesson in terms of who's who's the audience and who's serving that audience, what's the wait staff look like, and you just things that I had never sort of really had to pay attention to. And so it was a really important part of my learning, and just in terms of seeing events through other eyes as well. But I would say, what has COVID taught me, and what would I tell young people? It's the power of relationships. It really, really is. I mean, I know Mandy says this all the time, like, your network is really, where your riches are. And that's so true. Because if it's asking for help, or if it's asking for business, or if it's just asking for a connection, right? You got to lean into your network. And the fact that we don't even have to leave our laptops to do that through tools like LinkedIn now is such a gift. So, young people, I would say you've got to get comfortable with who you are as a brand, understanding how to use social media from a business standpoint. It's great that you want to post your tacos that you eat every single day for lunch, but how is that building your brand? I think that those are really important pieces that I constantly am, trying to convey to my students and to new professionals coming up in the industry. Even people looking to make a transition. You don't have to be
Right.
22. You
Yeah.
could be 42 and making a transition. And how do you then transition transferable skills, into our industry? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think building on that too, we're talking about young professionals, but I know Amani, you and I, all three of us teach, we teach in programs where we do have adult students that are transitioning
Mhm.
into a new career, or they're just interested in, whether it's business, entertainment, economics, or the hospitality industry. So I guess since we all see a lot of students, what is your hope and your worry for students right now that are either transitioning into or out of the industry, or new students coming into the industry? Like, what do you hope for them? What do you see that brings hope for you? And what do you see that brings you a little worry or concern that we should all just be aware?
Yeah, I would say for me, one of the things that I
Mm.
notice is that I and then not to be like, "Oh, well, this is how I had to learn the industry, so everyone has to learn it this way." But I literally sat
Mm.
at her kitchen table, and she gave me textbooks, and I would read these textbooks, and she and I would have conversations about what I was learning. We're so lucky that we have, internet, social media. We have all these amazing tools at our fingertips, but there's also something about, like, I could learn Spanish, or I could just have Google Translate tell me what I
Mm.
need to say in Spanish, right? I wish I spoke Spanish, but follow me along in the example here, right? So there's a difference between I'm fluent in a language. In this case, I'm fluent in my craft versus I'm just going to use Google Translate to convey what I want to say. I'm just going to use Pinterest to create an inspiration board, right? I'm not going to really have to do my own work to do that. What I'm seeing is less about people coming into the industry who are really hungry and want to learn. It's very easy now with the tools that we have to sort of shortcut it, and I think we're missing that foundation of teaching the industry. How do you behave at an event? Somebody asked me the other day. I was on an event in Austin. I was doing a project in Austin. Mandy, you know that because you helped me with that venue. And
Mhm.
somebody offered me a drink at the client reception. The clients were all, it was a reception. And I said, no, thank you. And they said, oh, do you not drink? And I said, no, I don't drink while I'm working. And that's not me being a prude. I mean, because there's nobody who loves a glass of wine more than this girl. But that's because I was trained that that's not the time that we drink. And so now I go to industry things and I see planners getting very chummy with clients. And it's great to have that very close knit relationship with your clients. but you have to understand that you're still the client and the consultant, or the client and the event planner. And for me, I get very uncomfortable drinking on site. I just don't do it because I wasn't trained that way. There's very much a professionalism. So that's what my worry might be, Mandy, is just I feel like that level of professionalism, everything's so casual nowadays with relationships and, oh, I follow you on
Mhm.
social, so I know a lot about you. And I just don't want us to get away from the professionalism of our industry. That's why I'm such a big proponent of education in our industry, right? Is because it helps to elevate all of us if we're
Mhm.
all better trained and better educated and have a stronger foundation on what it takes to do this job. We're not we're not curing cancer, but we're celebrating the fact that cancer will one day be cured, right? And so, we have an important part in sort of how the world functions. Um, and so I just want to make sure that we're not losing that professionalism in our industry by everything becoming so accessible to us. I hope that makes sense in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. The access is greater than ever before, and it does blur some lines. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but it is of interest and concern and worth highlighting for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think
So
also, what I would say to people is there's so much information available to you. There's so many different certificate programs you can go through or in degree programs, but just do your due diligence, because just because I put out a certificate program, now I have a lot of years in the industry, but that doesn't mean that everyone should be certified in Nicole's way of doing the events, right? So just be careful. I mean, I know people are putting a lot of content out, but you as the consumer of that content need to be discerning and enough to understand that, just because that's the way Nicole does it doesn't mean that's the only way there is to do. So I should probably take this, I should take Mandy's course too, or Amani's course, and just figure out what I like out of kind of all of that. And then let's create, the texture from there, but not just like, well, I just went to this one thing and now I have a certificate on my resume. What is that certificate really worth? So I think that we just need to be careful about that
Mhm.
too. That everybody all of a sudden popped up, in the last decade or so of like certification and I'll certify you because I've got, years of experience. And it's like, let's be careful about that too. And when we talk about the professionalism of our industry.
true, true.
Yeah.
Now, before we
Mhm.
get you to kind of flip the script on us,
Uh-huh.
what trends are you kind of keeping an eye on in our industry, in the events and the meeting planning industry?
Yeah. So actually, just today, I popped a question in one of the event groups I'm on Facebook because I am looking for someone who can crack this nugget on nonprofit galas. I just did one on Saturday, and is the typical sort of drill, right? Silent auction, come in for dinner, live auction, right? Mission moment, raise the paddle, dancing. Great event, no problem, no harm, no foul. But somebody's got to figure out a different way we do that.
Mhm.
How do we better make money for nonprofits without having to put everybody sort of through that experience? Because it feels very same, right? It's, you just insert the charity's name and it's going to probably be pretty much the same for every gala that everybody goes to. So that to me is of interest. Like, how do we do this different? What's out there? How do we flip that script to make it different? Interesting also, I would say last year for all the galas that I did and all the events that I did, with that being sort of the first full year that everybody came out of COVID, everybody just wanted to be in the room together. Nobody cared what the program was. Nobody cared what the room looked like. Nothing. They just wanted the opportunity to talk to each other. And the reality is that you could get the CEO up there talking about the incredible work that the organization is doing, and people will not shut up at their tables. Like, it just was this crazy thing. It was like, did everyone lose their manners during COVID? Like, nobody knows how to have like social skills anymore.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
with that, they were very, very generous, and they were, they had disposable income because of COVID, and all these different things. So last year, what I thought was, the positive and negatives were you couldn't get the audience to shut up, but they're writing big checks. This year, I'm sort of seeing a flip of that. It feels like we're sort of back to pre-COVID, where the audience is sort of paying attention. They're not necessarily talking as much, but they're also a little more conservative in terms of their money. So I caution that. My planning friends that are doing nonprofit work this year, I'm already starting to see that it's not what we had last year in terms of the same numbers. So that's kind of an interesting, I think, dynamic that's happening already in this year.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, We're gonna
Yeah.
kind of flip the script, and you can ask myself or Mandy a question, individual questions. So you can
Okay.
choose who you want to ask a question to first, and then we'll continue.
Okay. So obviously, I can't not ask you both about. I'm going to give you two questions if that's okay. Very related. So first is, what do you need to give yourself more permission to do? And secondly, what is your big ask? Because I'm a big believer, in my big ask. So, what is your big ask right now that I or anyone listening can help you with? So, first question is, what do you need to give yourself permission to do more of? Amani, I'll start
Hmm.
with you.
Okay. What do I need to give myself more permission to do? I would say probably do less. I do a
Mhm.
lot. And very similar to you, I have like a lot
Mm.
of different things that I'm doing, different revenue streams. But I probably need to give myself permission to do less so I can focus on really what I kind of love to do. Um, that's what first comes to mind.
Okay, good. Mandy, you want that first, and then we'll come circle
Yeah.
back with the big ask question. So, what do you need to give yourself permission to
Yeah, because
do?
I feel like Amani and I have a shared big ask. Well, so I just permission to write more. I love
Mhm.
writing, and when I was writing my book, it was a mission. But now that I have the book out and everything, I just haven't done it as much. And I truly, it's my magic. So it makes me so happy.
Mhm.
And I need to give myself permission to do sometimes I feel like, well, you already wrote the book. So unless you're going to write another book, don't write. But I like to write for fun. So I
Yeah.
just need to make space and give myself permission to write more just for fun,
Good.
without a book in mind, just write.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
good
and then your
question.
your shared big ask. What is
Mhm.
your big ask?
So Mandy, you can make one and then I'll make one and we can do a shared one. So you go first, you continue.
Ooh, 3 asks. I love this. I love all this asking. Well, first of all, that's the name of your podcast, though, The Big Ask, right, Nicole?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So she's got a great podcast called The Big Ask. I love. Okay. My big ask is for anybody that sells to anybody in hospitality or anybody that's on a sales team and you feel like you need more training, you feel like you need more coaching, hire me as your group coach. I love being in rooms with people, fixing problems, sharing how to grow business, sharing how to find better business, training about contracts, especially if you are a senior in the industry. There are a whole bunch of things that you don't even know that clients need right now
Mhm.
that are really, really good in contracts. So my big ask is to ask for more group sales coaching opportunities out, inside and outside the hospitality industry. I've coached all sorts of industries over the years, but to me, my best way to give back to the hospitality industry is to give them some training, but pay me for it. So that'd be my big
Okay.
ask.
Awesome.
All right.
What about you,
For
Amani? What
me,
about you,
my
Amani?
big ask would be if you are looking for a unique speaker, either for a workshop or a keynote that can use a DJ set as a way to show you how to grow your personal career or your professional business, to hire me, because that's the keynote that I offer. And I'm looking to grow that. And that's kind of like my big ask for the year in terms of what I would love for my business. And I just take people through, based on my book, I take people through the hours of a DJ set, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I show them how it can help them grow their business and how it helps them grow their career. And I'm just ready to share this with the world. Okay.
Excellent.
So now we have well, you
It's
start
a
off.
good book too. It's a good book.
Yes, yes. You start off the group ask, Mandy, and we have a big one there. Just since you asked, so go ahead.
So many asks. Well, Amani and I, we've been approached by different people. We love doing this Adventures in Business live. And we've had a couple customers ask us, can you do Adventures in Your Meeting live? So on the trade show floor, we can interview sponsors, speakers, attendees. We have Amani backstage doing backstage with Amani interviews. We have Mandy, roving reporter. And it's a package that we offer people that I don't know about you, Amani, but when we first started doing this, I don't think that was even an idea. But now we've got it wired and it's super fun to hit the road. So that the big ask is if you've got a conference or event where you think that would loop in some of the people that are at home that can't be there because there's a live stream
Yes.
component to it, or if you just want to add a little more dimension to your public spaces or your trade show, then that's our big ask is to invite us if
I
your
Yeah.
love it.
adventures in your meeting live.
I love it. Oh my God, that's such a
Mhm.
great idea, you guys. I hope
What's
that's
your
wildly
big ask? We
successful.
had to tell you ours. What's yours?
Yeah, gosh, my
Thank
big
you.
ask. Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, my big focus right now is just Paris 24. So that's the next Olympics. So that's a big goal of mine is to do Paris 24. And I'm hoping through my connections I already have that, something will yield from that. But that's a big goal of mine right now. I do a lot of travel coordination for my clients. So I'm just kind of hungry to do an incentive program right now because we can
Mm.
manage both the travel and the event side. So I would
Mm.
love to do an incentive program right now for a client. I just think, they're always so super fun to be on site with, and they're always a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. I know it's, more glamorous than it looks. But that's kind of my big ask at the moment. I would love to chat with somebody who's willing to recognize their talent and their employees and celebrate success. And incentive programs are such feel good. Everybody's there because they worked hard and kicked ass, and all those things. So yeah, that's kind of my big ask at the moment.
All right. Okay.
I might have something for you.
Oh,
Okay.
good. See,
Look at
look at
that.
that. See how the magic happens. See how the
Yes, a
magic
fool's mouth
happens.
does not get fed. So
Magic.
amen.
Magic.
I
Yes, exactly.
I love to ask this question at the end, because I think there's so much value in like wisdom and reflection. And if we were to sit down with Nicole as you're just graduating from UC Davis in the mid to late 90s or whatever, a few years ago,
Hmm. Hmm.
and give her advice based on what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would definitely say to quiet the voices in your head and listen to your heart, because ultimately you open your mouth and your heart speaks. So there's, as my dad often will say to me, "Ooh, there's a lot of conversation going on up there," and that's just me processing through, self doubt, all the self esteem, all those things. Um, that's a big piece of why I wrote my book as well, is because it's great to say, "Oh, I've worked the Olympics," and that looks all shiny, and everybody goes, "Oh, wow." There is a lot of backstory there. There's depression, there's self-esteem issues, there's all the things that many of us deal with. So please don't think just because, I ultimately got to the Olympics that's just because I came out of the womb this way. It didn't work, right? It wasn't like that. So I've worked very, very hard in my career, but I've also, struggled with my own self-doubt, and I still do as a business owner. There's nobody else in my office every day to sort of bounce ideas off of. So there's a lot of self-doubt that happens when you're running your own empire, as I like to say. So what would I tell my younger self is definitely just you got to just listen to your heart, open your mouth and let your heart speak, and create opportunities for yourself. And that all stems from just having, the courage to ask people to help you. And I really think that, relationships are the key to everything that we do. And the bigger your network, the more quality your network. It doesn't have to be a huge network. It just has to be a quality network, and the diversity of your network too, I think will make a huge difference. And so lean into LinkedIn and all these great tools that we have now. But you got to put the work in. It's not going to come to you. So you've got to have a little bravery in your heart to talk to somebody at a networking event, or to make a cold email, or pick up the phone and actually speak to somebody, as dreadful as that can feel. But that's how you build your relationships.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Benny? This has been spectacular. Any final thoughts from you
Oh.
before we let Nicole continue on her day?
Well, this hour
Uh,
goes too quick. We
I
need like a
know. My
full
I just it's
podcast.
Yes.
I know. We do, we do. I My takeaway from this is just the reminder of what you put in is what you get out. And when Nicole
Mhm.
says that she asked something for the universe and then she gave back, she means it. I have bore witness to this over the years of her giving back. And actually, I would say over the last 6 or 7 years when we connected, you just that little thing that you say, now what can I do for you or how can I help? I've adopted that on my own, and it does it when you ask that question, it's
Yeah.
so powerful. So she lives by that. What you put in is what you get out, and it's just every time I talk to you, it's a good reminder. So thank you for being an
You're
inspiration.
welcome. You're welcome. And I would say too, just, I mean, this is a total
Mhm.
aside, but one of the things I've also stopped doing is asking people what they do for a living, and ask them what brings them joy. So start
Mhm.
your next conversation with what's bringing
Yes.
you joy at this moment, or in this chapter, or this season of your life. And I think it's just a really interesting not only reminder to yourself of like, where is my joy? And if I'm not feeling joy in this work or this client or in this environment or living in this space, then, I need to pay attention to that and move on. So I'd invite everyone to just, think about where you're finding your joy. Also, I think that just helps to reframe. We're so into like, well, what do you do for a living? And it's like,
Yeah.
who cares what you do for a living? I'm more fascinated with, what's the contribution you're making to the world and where are you finding joy? And if we could start conversations like that, I think it would just be, the world would be a different place. So that's my Miss America pageant answer to your question.
Okay. Okay. And the crowd goes wild there.
I crown you. I crown you. You are crowned.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you very much for spending time with us today. We'll share your link with everyone in the chat and everything like that. And
Great.
please come back again and just continue to teach the youth and educate everyone and continue to be a mentor.
I appreciate it. And thanks so much. And what you guys are doing is making a big difference to our industry too, because you're having real conversations with real people who have real experiences, and good, bad, and ugly. We can all learn from each other. So thanks for what you're doing and putting the great content out into the world. This hour has been joyful for me. So I thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
good.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks for
Have a
Yes.
good
being
day.
here.
My
Okay.
pleasure.
All right. Mandy, we are all done. Yes. So great show. What do we know what we have to look forward to next week, or is it a surprise?
No, I know. I know. I actually looked it up. We have we have Jenny Perrin, who is an integrative nutritionist, and her business is really interesting. She does one-on-one coaching and then one-to-many coaching, where she actually works with HR departments and corporations on how to keep your employees um, better, healthy, well. And so I've known her for years. She has a very interesting personal backstory of how unwell she was and how through learning this integrative nutrition, how she got well. And I think she's going to be a real inspiration, but probably give us a lot of practical tips on just wellness in general and just foods, what to eat, our food system, all that stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you very much if you're watching it live. Thank you if you're watching the recording. We will see you again Monday, March 20th, 4 p.m. East Coast, 1 p.m. on the West. Thank you for watching again. Stay safe, and we will see you soon. Bye, everyone.
We'll see you soon. Thank you. Don't forget.